Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's pretty bad. Chase the guy in the water and they're still probably.
I just called dog ripping my pants off without getting shot. Don't play games. I was on the beach last night, just down a ways, or up a ways from us, thinking about them.
Last week was last week.
That was last week.
Yes.
And I missed
I
that.
got, you didn't get the invitation? 34 rounds.
Get ready for whatever comes my way.
The postal service
Yeah.
isn't as reliable as they used to.
I wouldn't have been able to come any,
Your parade last week. Yeah. Yeah.
we'll let him. Okay.
Tim. Porter.
I'd like to call to order the Properties, Environment, and Economic Development Committee. Roll call, please.
Mr. Erickson?
Here.
Mr. McCormick?
Here.
Mr. Beggs?
Here.
Mr. Hardy?
Here.
Mr. Walker?
Here.
Approval of the minutes of April 23rd, 2026.
I'll make a motion to approve the minute.
I'll support.
Moved by McCormick, supported by Beggs. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Would there be any changes to the agenda? Would there be any additions to the agenda?
Just a change to the number for preventative maintenance HVAC to 2026-68 from 65.
Preventative maintenance being changed to 2026-68. Would there be any other changes or corrections to the agenda? Seeking approval of the agenda as amended.
So moved, Walker.
I'll support Hardy. Moved by Walker, supported by Hardy. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Would there be any public comment at this time? Any public comment? Hearing none. We'll move to the Red Barn discussion. I had provided our board members a copy of the vision that Pentwater Township put together back in August of 2025 in regards to the corridor US 31 going into Pentwater. The Red Barn stands in Weir Township, right on the very edge of the township when you go down the hill, and that was built by Charles Mears. It's one of our oldest structures in Oceana County that still remains to this day from the lumbering era. And if you'll look at that outdoor complex vision that was seen, you'll see pictures the inside of the barn, outside of the structure. It sits on the Department of Natural Resources wildlife properties per se, and in regards to the Pittman-Robertson Act, those lands that were purchased from Kerry Mears were used with federal money. So it does have some covenants and restrictions on the uses for the barn, and also transfer of that real estate is rather involved. But being that Wildlife Division does not desire to own any buildings, that's not within the purvey of the Wildlife Division, the Red Barn at this point in time is going on a demolition list unless someone will pick up the responsibility and take stewardship of that barn. And there's been a small ad hoc committee put together of interested individuals within Pentwater Township and about that have put together this vision and also have talked about this for numerous years, what could be done with that. I was approached probably 4 or 5 years ago by Philip Jonason, and if you will look at the very second to the last page, you'll see an aerial that was taken, and also, not second to the last page, it must be on the very last page, you will see a parcel that sits within the Wildlife Division that is owned by Phil Jonason. And Phil had received that from his grandfather, Phil Glover, so it's been in the Glover family now for nearly 100 years. And if you look at that, you'll see quite a bit of the marsh area and the river area, which are protected wetlands, are owned by the Jonasons. And I've been in discussions with Mr. Jonason and the Department of Natural Resources in regards to an exchange, a land exchange, of which they are very open to receiving more of the land within the Wildlife Division, and therefore have contemplated trading a portion of that land for the Red Barn proper. The Red Barn has fallen into disrepair. There's been a lot of vandalism to the lower structure. Boards have been pulled off. We have had trips out there to kick people out. There was a barrel fire in there a couple years ago where there were some people in there staying, and the fear right now is that if the barn is not made weather tight and secure, you know, the deterioration from the winter and the freeze thaw period, along with the water that's encroaching into this foundation of the barn, that, you know, eventually it would fall down. About 10 years ago, I gave you an article on the Red Barn that Anna Mae Bush wrote last year. There have been many meetings in Pentwater with the public on saving the Red Barn. About 10 years ago, there was a fund created at the Oceana County Community Foundation to re-roof the barn, weather it in, and make the structure sound. Enough time has passed that maintenance has not been kept up, but the fund, I believe at this point now, holds about $13,000 in the fund that would be available to weather that barn in. And my hope today was that we could energize a conversation amongst the commissioners in our community that might be willing to take possession of the barn for an interim period of time. Therefore, a entity could be found that would operate the Red Barn, or at least keep it in the preserved state. And if you look at, I believe it would be about the 4th page in, you will see down on the right the North Oceana County Recreational Authority, NORA, and they had spent enough time on this that they put together a template for an organization on the northern end, a recreational organization that could or would be able to be formed, a public entity that would take stewardship of the Red Barn and perhaps see some of these visions go forward. Being that the barn is, the clock's ticking on the barn and something needs to happen soon, they have asked individuals if they might be interested in organizations in moving the Red Barn. And if any of you are familiar with Mr. Jonason, you'll realize that Phil is one of the premier building movers in our state and country, and it's well within the skills that Phil has in order to lift that barn up, support the structure, and get that thing weathered in. And Phil is still also interested in perhaps an exchange with the Wildlife Division. Therefore, in one form or another, we could save the barn and turn that over to a new entity and perhaps breathe new life into that structure. Any thoughts or any comments? Mr. Beggs?
What is, so I guess what's the specific ask? Do we have a time frame?
It's going on they have put together a timeline for the demolition of the barn,
Yeah.
or to get it moved to another location. It's a pretty simple ask, I feel, in that if the county board were able to secure the red barn and have it weathered in, that we would be able to then turn that over to an entity that would be able to operate it and maintain it. As you look at the plans that have been kicked around, there's many different alternatives. I know that we met with a conservation resource, or Gary was there. We've talked about it at Parks. It's been another topic. It's a little bit of a challenge for any one of our entities at this time, but the ask is to preserve the barn in hopes that we can keep it weathered in and it won't fall down, and for posterity. You know, within the Pentwater community in Pentwater, Michigan, Pentwater River North and South branches, you know, Charles Mears played a very, very large role in the development of Oceana County, and also in Hamlin and Mason County. You know, he was a very, very active and wealthy individual. And that barn did have a house on there at one point in time. It was an active working farm. The house burned, I believe, in the late 50s, early 60s when that went down. But I was approached at the Historical Society a couple of years ago by the state, a state historian, and what they were doing was trying to track down peach propagation in Oceana County, and Charles Mears was one of the individuals that brought the peach fruit tree to Oceana County and planted trees on that farm. It was a working farm they could feed their lumber camps with, and also the peaches then made their way east all the way to Walkerville, where there was a stop on the Mason-Oceana Railroad. It was called Peachville. So a lot of our crops in the early days, you know, went to the M&O and went to Pere Marquette Lake and was put on ships and taken to Milwaukee and Chicago for fresh fruit. So they were very interested in peach propagation and the roles that Charles Mears and that property did play. I know right now, you know, it is gated back there, but it's all available to hike and walk. There are hunters that go up there during the hunting season. And I'd like to see if in the future that we provide that outdoor recreation opportunity to more people. There's hundreds and hundreds of acres on the Pentwater River that are beautiful, and you know, if you've read the paper or seen, there's been an increased interest in kayaking from Hart to Pentwater, and also up the North Branch of the river. That's a beautiful river to go up. So there's many different uses that property would be able to fill, and a kayak launch was one of them that was very interesting. Exhibits, a meeting hall, a wedding venue. There's a lot of different ideas in that, but my hope right now is that we're able to catch it from falling and save it. And you know, if we can buy some time, I think it is in the best interest of our history to do what we can to preserve it right now.
What, so you said looking for a kind of a stopgap until it can be turned over to an entity of some sort. I guess I'm curious, this has been a conversation for a while, if an entity hasn't already been engaged and willing will there be an entity?
That's what that NORA is to create that entity. And with the explosion of people coming into Pentwater and people looking for things to do, you know, we've seen a tremendous amount of wealth move into the area, and younger people retiring earlier. We need to keep that opportunity alive.
Yep.
Mhm.
Paul, I have two questions. Have there been any estimates on what it would cost to stabilize that building? And if anybody takes, whether it's that North Alliance or whether it is a unit of government, Weir Township, Pentwater Township, or a combination through the Urban Cooperation Act between them, they look at it. If anybody takes over, how much would liability insurance cost for that to get into it? Because, you know, the state doesn't have to carry insurance because they're indemnified for a lot of things. But if somebody else owns that, they're gonna have to have insurance to cover people going in there and things going on all the time. Have any numbers come up on what insurance would cost or what it would cost to stabilize that building?
And that was what I was hoping we could ask our administrator to find out what the potential ongoing cost may be for the liability insurance, yes. As far as the structure is concerned, you know, that's an original stone-built foundation, and if you're familiar with the work Phil does, you're looking at a couple $100,000 to lift it up and put a new basement under it with a proper ceiling height. So, you know, it's
So 13,000 is not going to go.
oh no, it won't do that, but what it needs right now is it needs to have all those holes in the walls sealed up and the water won't encroach, and then we won't have people in the barn building fires or potentially the loss of the barn because it's not been stabilized. Yeah, the foundation is not gone. It could use a little of Phil's help to get the barn squared up a touch and get it weathered in. Yes, I realize that. But the monies are available to do such a thing. It only needs someone to take the lead and to do that. Pentwater Township is, right now there will be another meeting of this group coming up within the next 2 weeks to discuss it further. But I wanted to bring it to this board so that I did my due diligence to let the people know that we're at a time right now we've got to make a decision. Someone's got to make a decision with that barn before the state comes in and tears it down.
I was reading I think it was an email from the DNR regarding that. They said that after a 3-year time period, and this was email was dated January 3rd, 2025, if a trade is not successful, the DNR will place the barn up for auction or disposal. And it says either to move in one piece or dismantle and remove the barn already on a disposal list with the DNR wildlife division properties that have buildings we want to remove. And I think it goes on to say something about there's no funds available for that. And obviously they're not going to sell the property that it sits on. Correct. Unless they do a trade. But I'm kind of interested, Pentwater Township or Pentwater itself, have they tried to get any grant funding for this?
Not other than the community foundation when they had that fund drive and we created.
Yeah, that was what,
fund. 2013
or somewhere in there, 14. They spent $40,000 on it or whatever. I did look up and I found that, and I think his statement that the Department of Natural Resources doesn't do funding for that, because actually they do. The Michigan National Resource Trust Fund, they call it MNRTF, provides grants to state and local governments for development of public outdoor recreation facilities, which can include the renovation of existing historic structures. And I guess there's a recreational passport grant, same thing, for Facilities and Land and Water Conservation Fund. I just wonder why the townships, nobody's looked at it yet? Or-
It's been discussed. I've talked to Molinar's office about that because of the Pittman Robertson. They kicked the ball back to me. I've talked to both Bumstead and Vanderwall about that. I got a little lukewarm interest in that. As a historical society, the barn was offered to us to dismantle and move to Mears before we spent $250,000 on the Red Barn in Mears. You know, potentially I had the opportunity to take that barn and move it to Mears and use the $250,000 to build the Red Barn we have in Mears now to reconstruct that on the property. I don't think that's the highest and best use for that barn, to move it off its location. It's been there all my life, all my mother's life, all my grandmother's life. I don't see where we, as temporary stewards, shouldn't look into the future for our grandchildren and their children, and to keep that entity the way it is. You know, that's probably the richest history we've got around here, aside from the Crystal Valley Dam. No, I wanted our board to be totally aware of it, and I'm sure the Pentwater people. The problem being that it sits in Weir. It doesn't sit in Pentwater.
Mm-hmm.
And Weir does not have the resources that Pentwater has, and that's where the interest has come from, the Pentwater people, in recreating that corridor. My understanding is Johnny's has been sold, and it'll go down and create a park there, where Johnny's Long Bridge Inn is now, and they want to expand the bicycle trail from Hart, you know, down into downtown Pentwater, and then again up to the Red Barn. So there's multiple uses that people had visions for, but yeah, as far as the Department of Natural Resources Trust Division, there's a lot of money, and if we could get the interest of our lawmakers to look forward into this, you know, there should be grant monies available, and I think they need to be pursued.
You know, agreed that they need to be pursued, but those grants are not going to be, you're not going to be able to apply for them and receive those grants in a short period of time. The trust fund grants and the recreation improvement grants are very, very competitive throughout the whole state. So to get involved, I think it would be tough to say we would look at this for 6 months or a year at the most, and nothing's going to happen in that length of time as far as getting grants or getting money. I would be very surprised that anything can get turned that quick.
Yeah, I'm not saying that it would, but as in the letter that was referenced by Mr. Hardy that was written to me from Peter Kaling and Valerie Frowley from the state, yeah, it did outline a procedure that we could go through to save that Red Barn, and what the state would really like to do is receive a portion of the Jonason property. That would make them very, very happy. So we do have a bargaining chip that no one else has in that 40 acres, or a portion of that 40 acres that sit on the wetlands.
Whoever is going to take possession and develop that, is it the state's intention of, through a trade or something similar to that they get all of the property to go along with it, or are they just going to get the partial where the barn sits?
Partial where the barn sits, probably where the house.
Well, from a business standpoint, I can tell you, if it was me, I wouldn't touch it if all I got was a barn that's going to cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to stabilize, and not get the property to go with it.
No, the property, about 5 acres on the north end along the road. If you look at the one drawing, that was what was planned. I've never been the kind of person that backs down from something like this, and I think the barn is worthy.
And I respect that. Well, we're not unlimited resources either, you know, as a unit of government.
Well, I'm not saying, I'm asking that we be a steward in the interim and not take on restoration of that property. That's not the intention. The intention is to redress that letter from 2025 wherein it's on a demolition list and something needs to happen, and they outlined what may be able to occur to save that red barn. Otherwise, it would go into auction, somebody's going to take it down, and it'll be somewhere else. Maybe Phil will pick it up and take it down the road and put it in another spot. I don't know. But I think where is as is better than letting someone with a big pocketbook take that barn down and put it elsewhere.
Paul, you mentioned there's $13,000 in a fund. Is that the community foundation, or?
It's still in the fund.
And is that dedicated to the red barn?
Mm-hmm. And it's not as if that fund couldn't be increased with a vision.
Yeah, and I guess if they're looking to fix it, I guess, and this is just my opinion, and I guess I'll state it, that I think they've got a little over 2.5 years to figure something out. I would rather have, you know, either the community foundation or the Pentwater Service Club or Weir Township figure it out and see if they can apply for grants to do this, because I think if it comes to the county, we're staring at, we don't know how much funding. That's just my thought. They've got a couple-year grace period here, and if they've got $13,000 in their fund and they need to patch up a couple boards on it, that seems to be kind of a quick and easy fix.
But they want an entity to take possession, or at least be the custodian.
Well, yeah, but they're not going to do anything for 3 years, et cetera. Well, that was from 2020, January 2020, so maybe 2 years.
But it could get weathered in before fall if someone were to step forward.
Yeah, but I guess that's, to me, it's, I know it's a Pentwater icon, but for me, I'd rather see one of those folks, either like the Service Club or the Community Foundation or the townships, investigate that, see what they want to do with it. I'm not sure expense-wise if, number one, if we're able to afford it. Number two, you know, there's a lot of hidden costs on here, and if it ends up being moved, obviously, maybe it moves into Pentwater Township.
It was offered to be reconstructed down at Charles Muir State Park, downtown Pentwater, and that didn't happen either.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, my thought is I would rather leave it over to the townships and to the Pentwater people to handle it and see where it goes. Because for us, it's a big liability that we don't know the outcome. We don't know if we're going to get grant funding, and if somebody in Pentwater Township or Pentwater or in Weir wants to check and see what the grant status is and what they can get and do it, then hallelujah. But we could put money in it now to save it for a short period of time and end up not being able to get anything.
Well,
that's my worry.
We're at a crossroad. You know, I do get it, but then I look at some of the other things that we've done in this community in the last 20 years that no one ever thought would happen, and they did. You know, we've got a $20 million foundation. We have a beautiful Shelby Township park. Our park system is alive and thriving. We've done a lot of things in the last 20 years around here that nobody thought could happen, and I do feel that it's at the point where we could be very helpful and constructive with that. But you know, everybody wants to talk about liability. We've got liability everywhere. We've got so much liability with our vacant buildings.
But even the park in Shelby, that really wasn't run through. We're the fiduciary on that, but that was grants and stuff that the township got, and that's kind of what I'm saying here. Is that if somebody wants to step up and see what they can get for that, that might answer all the questions rather than us getting involved at this particular time. That's just my feeling.
No, I understand. Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, I have concerns if we stepped into this, our liability being one, funding being the other, and being locked into, this long term if no other entity is found. So, I think the only way I would be in favor of this is that there's a sunset date, probably a year.
I think there's 3 in that agreement.
Yeah. In committing dollars, we already have one county park that's, we're gonna be discussing next, that we're not able to fund, haven't been able to fund maintenance and upkeep, and I'm not saying we're taking this on as a county park, but we already have responsibilities in hand that we're struggling to manage well, and so it'd have to be a budget neutral transaction for me to be in favor of it as well, regardless of how long it went. If there's $13,000 to patch it up in the community foundation, great, that's its budget. That's outside of our budget. Effort could be spent to solicit donations and whatnot, but for money to come out of the general fund to manage this project, I think the site plan that's in front of me, it looks great. I just don't think it's a county project. But I'd love to see somebody do it, and that's that words come easy when I'd love to see somebody else do it. I think it's a great idea. I just don't think it's a county project. But I don't know what we can do in the meantime. I don't know what our liabilities are if somebody does go in there and gets hurt. If the thing falls down, well, there's your answer. Somebody can come in and haul the rubble away, which would be unfortunate. But I do worry about our liability if we are now the entity that has stewardship of this program, and somebody goes in there and gets hurt, gets killed. I don't know. It's muddy water with it being a state property, but we're the steward of it, and I don't know. I'd love to see an entity formed that could just take it over from the state and leave the county out of it, but that also is quite a process.
Very good. Any other comments? Hearing none, we will move to the Crystal Valley Dam discussion.
I provided you information from CRA. There was also a letter there from Mr. Tiffany, and in addition to other information that he has provided. And I'm just looking for guidance, discussion, what the board would like to see moving forward.
I think that we're very, very close, and we have to make a decision one way or the other on where we're going to be. This can has been kicked around for many years too, but I don't think it is unreasonable that when we're talking about a minimum of $1.7 million to do everything that the state wants done to that dam to save it, and no funding available with that. I think it's probably time that we formally go back to Crystal Township and ask Crystal Township if they have any thoughts or any ideas on where the money can be raised to assist with any reconstruction or any work on that dam, and give them a period of time to come back to us and with any ideas or any concrete things that the money can, how much money can be raised in the community foundation, how much money can be raised. We know there's no state grants. I talked to another person with Fish and Wildlife, and we talked about the sea lampreys. Well, we know that that's going to be, at the minimum, if we started right now, 2 years out, you know, with anything with that. What's the other board members? Does it make any sense to go back to the area out there where that Crystal Valley Dam is and ask them what their thoughts on how it can be funded? What do the other board members think?
Well, I don't disagree. I think going back to Crystal Township, you know, if Parks and Recs have any, you know, I know they've been working on this project alongside of us for a long time, but if they have any ideas or potential sponsors to kick in money, you know, I explained to Wimser Dick Board last week that we kind of had, maybe it was 2 weeks ago, two parallel conversations, you know, and I'm willing to run parallel conversations with Save the Dam, we need funding, remove the dam, we need funding. They're both the same conversation with a different outcome. But I think you're right. I think it's time to, you know, we've exhausted our efforts to try and find grant money, and as Mr. Tiffany said, we're looking at private donations or general fund money. Is probably the only way to fund repair or restoration. Really it boils down to replacement. If we're honest with Eagle's requirements, we're looking at replacement or removal. So.
I know, if I may, Paul, I know that when it was reviewed previously here, and I think some of the comments were kind of the same, but they also indicated that even with dam removal, that a portion of that money has to come from the county. Do we have any idea? Is that like 20%, 30%? No.
No, we don't know.
And if we use Marshville as an example, there was very little, none.
Zero.
Yeah.
General fund dollars.
You know, that, I don't know if that's it's comparable. I don't know if it's equal. There were a number of funding sources. NOAA, 14 different funding sources for that.
And that was removal and rehabilitation.
Yeah.
So
It was already removed. It was gone
Well,
when we
yeah,
start. You know,
chunk-
that's apples to apples. And the biggest problem, the very biggest problem is if you've grown up here and you've watched all the boys that have built these things through the years, Eagle has changed the field. It's not a level playing field anymore. You're dealing with people that are using big city thinking in farm towns, and that dam that we've got out there, the Griner boys, the Owen boys, those are the boys that put that darn thing in there, and they did it with horses and steam shovels, and they used an old railroad grade to build it. If you'll go out to Gales Pond and you'll take a look at what we're holding Gales Pond, and you'll see that it is driven steel, just like we drove in Pentwater Lake, like Dan Halleck has driven all down Lake Michigan, and there's no reason in the world that any one of our contractors couldn't go out there and drive steel in and secure that dam at a very low dollar amount rather than what we are seeing. And when they raised that spillway level to a 200-year storm, you know, they put things right out of our reach. Right. And I went out there every day during, you know, the last major rainfall we had. That spillway, I don't care if we got 12 inches in 12 hours, that spillway is going to handle the water that goes over it. And there's an alternate plan to add a spillway right next to it. That structure is 14 inches thick on the top. Yes, there may be some voids underneath that water wash is done, but with some of the new methods that they've used to push grout in, it's repairable, and it doesn't have to be a multi-million-dollar structure. Eagles put that on us.
Well, yeah, so I mean, unfortunately, that
They make the rules.
They make the rules.
Well,
and
I'm tired
obviously
of,
it's-
you know, everybody holds their hands up and they say, well, you know, they make the rules. Well, no, Tom Reiner could have had this thing done last year. Tom Omen could have had this thing done last year. It's driving sheet steel. We've driven sheet steel all the way around Pentwater Lake.
You know, but they won't approve it. And that's the issue.
How many millions of dollars do you want to spend in court to fight Eagle? Because that's what it would take.
I believe it needs special dispensation. When you're talking about a low hazard dam and you continually put it up against the Sanford Dam, I don't think that's
Different.
not what we're up against. It's a farm pond.
Well, I agree, we should probably ask
The
locals.
whole, and I say Crystal Township, but I mean the whole area out there.
Yeah.
You know, everybody at the people that live there, everybody, you know, what can you do, you know, and along with that, I think that we should consider, I'm just asking the other board members to consider this. At our last meeting in August, let's make a decision what we're gonna do. We have between now and 90 days, the end of August, to make a decision. Do we start the process to remove it, or how much money do we have to save it? You know, committed to save it, one or the other. You know, it's not doing any good for anybody. And Jim Tiffany has done a great job, but his cash register is rolling all the time too.
He
Every
said
time.
he's done.
Yeah.
You know, his services, but you know, on my initial conversation, I got Jim Tiffany's name from a man named Jim Bernier, and Jim Bernier is a premier park builder in Michigan, works with MC Smith and other great park people, and Jim Bernier is the guy that put together the Pure Marquette Township planning vision that took over the Dow property. And that's how I came across Jim Tiffany, and the initial conversations were we could drive steel all the way across that and be done with this thing. It's a farm pond, and
We also looked at DeWinda watering, and look at what DeWinda, you know, we go out west, you know, where on hydroelectric dams, where all of the condos that were built around the perimeter, one of them were slipping into the water, and DeWinda watering came in, and they, with their big trencher that they have, they went down 100 feet and they poured a concrete wall that was 2 feet wide and 100 feet deep, all the way in between that water. And you know, there are people that own a home on Upper Silver Lake, or on Silver Lake, North Silver Lake Drive. There are people that have the way to handle those things, sheet piling or retainer walls or anything, but unfortunately, I don't know how you're going to get any of it to Eagle. You know, and I agree with Mr. Beggs that, you know.
Well, and even our engineer, you know, Tiffany said the best private foundations, corporations, individual donations, potentially a direct, you know, a way to fund it. I was more taken back to the, you know, some of the and you know, this is the gentleman we hired. Although Crystal Valley Dam is recognized as a barrier to protect sea lamprey migration, it is not considered a high priority structure. And so limited upstream watershed, blah blah blah, and it goes the DNR preference. And now this is a different state organization. The DNR preference is removal of the dam rather than rehabilitation. So we're not just fighting Eagle, we're fighting
somebody from somewhere else that doesn't live here.
Well,
but they're all going to get.
Paul, I've mentioned this in the past. Look at the Black River Dam in Gogebic County 2 years ago. That was owned by the Department of Natural Resources that washed out. And Eagle cited the Department of Natural Resources criminally for allowing that dam to wash out.
Yeah.
How can we fight people like that?
We need to.
I think we asked.
And the other part that we haven't even gone down to is if that dam were to be removed, that property all reverts back to the original landowners.
Well, it revotes the landowner. So if that property was sold, most of that is, again, riparian rights back to the stream. And if there's easements through there, I don't know if the county holds easements, those easements just can be eliminated. So if those lots are sold, or the land, or whatever, that goes back to current owner.
Paul, I'm gonna ask the question. Can we get a concurrence from the other board members to just formally ask the locals out there what they can do financially to help save it?
Yeah, I think that's, obviously, this is something that the county's not gonna be able to afford.
We can't
to
do it,
rebuild
we can't.
Especially with the new rules and regs that Eagle has on it. And I honestly, if you're talking $1.5 million, I don't know if we're even there yet. I mean, by the time they get done allowing us to repair, it may be $2 million.
I don't think we can do it on our own.
No. So I think it's worthwhile to ask,
Tim,
to see what they...
Tim, what's your thought?
I think it's a good plan. Set a date to make a decision. Put it out to Parks and Recs and the community out there and see what kind of money can be drummed up.
Joel?
We don't need money in hand, but we need some commitments.
Joel, what do you think?
Yeah, maybe the township could send out a letter to residents, you know, and see if
And I
we can get any response.
What do the other board members think about bringing this back, setting a date when we're gonna bring it back, August or September or sometime? Let's not drag it on anymore. Let's get a date. What's a reasonable time? Is September a more reasonable time, 120 days than August? What's the thought?
My thought would be the end of August. That's kind of a 90-day period.
My thought is, let's not bother those boys out there till they get the crops all in.
Yeah,
You know,
I don't know how long Eagle and everybody else is gonna sit on the hands before they start getting nasty.
They gotta do their inspection here before too long.
They're going to, but I think if we have a sunset on it, when we're gonna make a decision, I don't think they wanna litigate any more than,
Hopefully.
I would hope they don't wanna
Hopefully.
litigate any more than we wanna be involved with it. Paul, what's the reasonable time?
October 1st.
Can the other board members live with October 1st?
That's fine.
Joel?
Sure, that's
Let's do it. We'll give them plenty, we'll give them time. And I'm not advocating one way or the other, but I know that, you know, I don't know where we can come up with $1.7 million without laying off or cutting services someplace else.
No, I'm not, I'm definitely not in favor of spending that kind of money on that dam. As I had said previously, if it was left up to a local contractor, it'd all be done and we wouldn't be talking about it anymore. It's just we're dealing with engineers from somewhere else that have raised the bar from a 100-year rain to a 200-year rain. And when I went out and watched that thing, we about 8 inches on the spillway, and it gave us 2 more feet of spillway yet to go. It's just, it'll perform. It will continue to perform. And with a little bit of sheet steel driven, it'd be there another 100 years. Just as though all those cottages on Lake Michigan, if you go out to Little Point Sauble and you stand on the top of the hill and you look down, you'll see many of our friends have built seawalls down there, 100, 200 foot of seawall, and they packed it all full of limestone, and it's beautiful, and it's going to hold for a long time. And you know, I just continually have a problem with the bar being raised for a low hazard dam. If that dam washed out tomorrow, we'd have a little bit of water go over 120th and maybe wash it.
No, actually, Eagle would sue you.
Probably.
They would.
Paul,
Okay.
are you okay with us setting of October 1st?
It does have to happen.
And contacting, you know, the people out there.
Well, I'll be out the next meeting and they'll know about it.
Well,
I
I
think
think,
October 1st is fair.
I think that a formal letter needs to go to the township also. Is that okay with the other board members, that Tracy drafts a letter
Yeah.
to the township? You know, giving a date and everything with it, the October 1st. Just asking for their input on how we can fund it, what we can do.
Yeah, and then maybe they can put pressure on our congressman or who knows, you know.
One other thing I just wanted to point out, I was having conversations with my administrators while I was at conference last week about dams, and specifically Midland County, because they, you know, they
Yeah.
had such a problem with theirs. But one of the comments that was made is you can go in and make changes to the dam. Eagle comes out and they're going to change a pendulum on you. They're just going to change it up, and you're going to end up putting more money into it. So I hope that is not the case.
Yeah.
So.
Well, let's face it, the state doesn't want dams,
Yeah.
period. Whatever organization it is, they don't want dams. That's,
And fortunately, we're one of the tiny dams that they're doing this with. You know, the hydroelectric dams, you know, the Augury, you know, basin, and the Forest Lake Basin with that dam and stuff there going on. And if that basin goes out, there's going to be over 360 homes that are going to go out with it. So, and that dam was built in 1930 also. But that's a real confusing mess up there. But, and you know, I read all of those things and read the news from several different, you know, news things, you know, every day, and you know, we're one of the small ones, but they're not going to let the little guys get away either.
yep. Okay.
I think we can move forward
Yep.
that way, Paul.
All right.
Well, thank you, sir. Preventative maintenance for the HVAC.
We had RFPs that went out accepting sealed bids for our preventative maintenance for all of the county buildings. We received 3 of those back. Hearst, Monarch Welding and Engineering, and Andy Egan Company. Hearst Mechanical came in at $20,625 for a 3-year total. Monarch $33,910, and Andy Egan Company $44,511. Those are paid out semi-annually. And then there's some notes there. Those bids were opened up by the clerk's office and a member of our office, and they put together the spreadsheet for your information. The previous preventative maintenance contract was $19,467 for a 3-year period. So Hearst Mechanicals came in close to what we were already paying. We did reach out to, I called some locals, asked, because we didn't receive any local bids, and we're informed that the one company said it's just too big of a project for them to take on. And I didn't hear back from the other one.
Yeah.
Hearst Mechanical does have people that live in Oceana County. I see their trucks at different residents when I'm traveling. So, and they bought out a Montague business, so we're aware. And they know, they've done work on the systems at the jail and stuff, so they understand what their systems are.
I see there was a note on that one too, the Egan Company, there was a subject to a 3% increase after 1 year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They were also high bid, so
Well,
I
got a kick out of the other note that it
24.
automatically renews if we don't notify them in 30 days at the end of the 30 days before the expiration of the contract. It automatically renews.
Right.
That's a nice thing to have if you're the vendor.
yeah.
Very good. Thank you. Department head reports. Would there be any department head reports? Mr. McKean.
Morning. Gary
Morning,
McKean,
Gary.
Oceana County Parks. Just 2 comments regarding the dam at Crystal Valley. This all really has come about, well, let's go back just a quick second. This is the 4th year anniversary of having to do another DNR dam safety study. So we've engaged through Michelle Martin's office, the DNR, to come out and perform the dam safety overview. So we'll probably see a report probably about the 1st of October, I would think. They'll probably do this in August, is what they normally do. Secondly, how this all came back to you is that we just don't have in parks the finances to do the maintenance that's required on this dam long term. And Paul will know that, you know, every, I don't know how many years it's been, but we've done some Band-Aid patching here and there, about what, 20,000, maybe 24,000. But that's still not enough in our budget to continue to do that type of thing. And now that we know through Spicer and through Jim Tiffany that there are this major problem in the center of underneath the slab, that's going to take some long-term ability. Why this all came about is because we don't have the ability to do this continual maintenance on this area. Everything we've tried to do in the last 7 or 8 years that I've been associated with the county parks is trying to build stuff that's going to be long-term, that's going to hold up, that the next guy sitting on that seat where I sit, where Bob Walker is not going to have to deal with us in 10 more years.
Yeah.
We can find the 1.7 million. That would be great. I'd love to see that. It's a beautiful spot. But the fact is, how are we going to pay for it the next time? It's going to be something else. So I won't say any more. The Marshville Dam, I'll clarify to Tim's comment. Marshville, we paid $5,000 to Conservation and Resource Alliance to find funding initially. And toward the end of the project, we had to do a $10,000 matching grant to put in the boardwalk, which was a $300,000 thing through Wimserdick. So all told, county money was $5,000 to fund the initial funding and $10,000 as a matching grant fund out of our 208 fund, or out of our 488 fund. So we had 15,000 into 2.3 million.
Decimal points of a percentage.
I said zero. I was mistaken.
Yeah.
CRA, when I walked through the property with CRA, they thought that probably if the county could come up with $100,000, they could make that fly. A lot of the grants, as it turns out, that we're looking at, like the DNR grants that we're looking at, are matching grants. We don't have the money in our account. I have $28,000 in our matching grant fund. So I can't even, that's going to give me 10%, so a grant for $280,000 will clear us out. So I'm not trying to pour mouth, I'm just telling the reality is it's a situation we're in it's tough. So, and one last thing, Mark Tonello is the fish biologist. Mark is, he was instrumental in finding the grants for us to do the Marshville project. And he wrote the letter to Eagle that said this dam needs to be redone, we need to take out the culverts. I don't need to go through the whole story again. But the fact is he carries a lot of weight with Eagle. And when Tonello says that the dam needs to be removed, or whatever the case, Eagle kind of marches along with him, I have to say. So, buyer beware, laissez-faire, as they say.
Thank you, Gary.
Sheriff Mask.
Good morning, everyone.
Sure.
We had a busy weekend over the holiday weekend. Our guys were real busy. Our complaint numbers were high. We had several arrests. Nothing. We did have a felonious assault and a couple drunk drivers, a couple accidents on the dunes, some substantial broken back type of injury, fatalities, unfortunately. So busy weekend. Our boat has been doing fantastic in Silver Lake. So we've had to rework some of the lift on the way it was originally set. We pivoted it 90 degrees to get us a little bit more depth so that the boat lift works appropriately. And Sergeant Phillips and the Marine Division are taking care of all that, and I know they were working on it late last night. They had to build a little addition to the dock so that we could access the boat. But we have a very talented trustee right now who's he's a jiffy with a cutoff saw and a screw gun, and he made a nice dock extension for us. So that was installed yesterday, and so we're getting some nice work done on that. Yeah, I'm sure you've all seen the local reports about damage to some local headstones at some of our cemeteries. Both of the detectives are working on that, and we've made some really nice headway. We do have a person of interest and are pursuing nicely on that incident.
Good.
I hope to have amends made soon. I know there's a lot of community outcry about that. People are ticked
Upset.
off, and rightfully so. So, but we are putting in a larger effort towards bringing that person to be held responsible for that. We've got 40 in jail. Things are going pretty well there. Any questions for me? Sir?
Sure. I read the article on the Oceana Press about Lake Michigan in the north side of the county. It is unfortunate that that dog owner put one of your deputies or put somebody walking in the beach in that position, and I feel sorry for your deputy that, you know, had to take the action he did on that, because there is a dog owner who was not responsible. Yeah.
Thank you for your comments. You're exactly
And
right.
pass that on to your
Yeah,
deputy.
very difficult
That's not an easy
situation.
thing to do.
Right, not an easy thing to do. And he is a extreme dog lover himself. It hurt his heart to have to do that, but it was in everyone's best interest at the time. That dog was out of control and needed to be addressed. And you know, we went back to the property owner and addressed that. Animal Control's right there working with us, working side by side in that situation. A citation were issued. The victim was, you know, he was rightfully so upset. I'm sure there's going to be some civil situation for them to deal with. Not necessarily my problem. That's not my lane, but
Yeah.
I'm sure that's coming. But thank you for your comments.
I have a question on that. So it wasn't too long ago that we kind of redid our dog ordinance, and that moved an opportunity from it being an automatic 93-day misdemeanor to a civil infraction. Was officer discretion used in how that was charged?
So it was.
You don't need to go into the details, I suppose, but
Yeah, so it was, and during the investigation, there was an attempt to contain the animals. The animals overcame, you know, they're two big, strong dogs.
Yeah.
There was a woven wire fence in play that the dogs overcame. You know, I know what my dog's, I believe I know what my dog's capable of, and I address that appropriately. There was an effort. It wasn't enough, obviously, for the situation.
yeah.
Big strong dogs. And the damage, you know, that gentleman had his pants ripped right off him. I didn't see the gentleman. I seen the pictures. I heard the first-hand account from the deputy. You know, he had his pants ripped right off him, and he had several bite marks, lacerations. You know, he's bleeding several different ways. And had he not been able to take refuge in Lake Michigan, I don't know what would have happened there.
Right.
That was getting stupid.
Yeah.
Out of control. Okay. Have any questions? I'll be in the back corner.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other department head reports? Hearing none. Public comment. Would there be any public comment? Hearing none, we'll adjourn the Properties, Environment, and Economic Development Committee.
Okay, we'll continue on. I'd like to call to order the Finance and Administration Committee. May we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Hardy?
Here.
Mr. Banks?
Here.
Mr. McCormick?
Here.
Mr. Erickson?
Here.
Mr. Walker?
Here.
I'd ask for approval of the meeting minutes from May 14th, 2026.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Support.
Motion by Beggs, support by McCormick. Any questions? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried. Are there any changes to the agenda? Hearing none, I'll ask for approval of the agenda.
So moved, Walker.
Moved by Walker.
Support. Go ahead, Mr. McCormick.
Support by Mr. McCormick. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carried. Is there any public comment at this time for the Finance and Administration Committee? Hearing none, we'll move on. Mr. Stockhill, Director of Life AMS, quarterly report.
Morning, Jeff.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for seeing me a little bit early. I thought I was late and I reached out and I've got this report and I don't know what my date is to give it. So I was invited to come here, so thank you for that. During this reporting period, we had 585 ambulance transports and on-scene assessments here in the county. Just a one increase over last year during the first quarter, so pretty flat growth here. A couple of special events that we make a very big deal out of. One is our anniversary. We celebrated the company's 46th anniversary with an outing at the Grand Rapids Griffins game. Several people from this operation came to it. Enter North had a dinner ahead of time at the venue there, which is it's just nice to get out and see people outside of work and be able to enjoy that. For the second year in a row, the Griffins did win in overtime. On February 25th, we held a Heart Saver Award celebration at our Grand Rapids office. Previously, this was done by Kent County EMS, the MCA down there, as well as Kalamazoo County, which focused just on the urban operations. And what it did is start recognizing rescue people that actually participated in a successful cardiac arrest save where somebody left the hospital cognitively intact. You know, it's a true life saved. They stopped doing that and Life EMS took that over, but this year they included the urban ops in it now that we have control over it. So several of my folks did go down to that. And you know, I attended as well, and I thought it was very poignant. One of my field instructors who happens to work out of Nuevo County told me afterwards, he goes, I went there to support his trainee that participated in it. He goes, I really didn't realize how much that meant to me. So I think it's things like this that really make us stand out as a company. We were selected again as West Michigan's best and brightest company, best and brightest 101 companies to work for. We're also recognized nationally as one of the best and brightest companies to work for. The events like this lead into the employee or associate surveys that give us this award, that grant this, and it's company satisfaction, company engagement, you know, benefits pay, and several other factors, and that's the only thing that brings us to this. It's not, we don't present anything else other than these associate surveys to them. Moving forward, we're in the midst of trying to find all the coverage for the Electric Forest Festival coming up. I have yet to reach out to Montcalm County as far as specific dates, but I know they've committed to helping us again, and they have several of their personnel over there that do enjoy working over here for that event. Back in just after the first of the year, Life EMS was selected to take over the Grand Haven area for EMS coverage. We had a March 1st start date, but as many turnovers and mutual aid requests we were getting, we put one vehicle on beginning early February, and then two subsequently thereafter that until the 1st of March when we were fully operational there. About 2 months into this, one of the local fire chiefs sent a letter with a quote that I'll use part of it there just to have respect for other personnel at other areas. Your service is night and day different than what we were receiving, and it went on for the last 2 years down there, and a very positive thing for us. There were 13 requests for fire standbys during this reporting period, with over 20 hours of coverage for that respite for the firefighters. There are a multitude of weather exemptions on here. And to be perfectly clear with you, when I grab a report like this, my focus looks on the average. That tells me where we're ticking, not the outliers. And I will just a little anecdotal thing. I was questioned about an hour and 18-minute response time in Nuevo County in my last report, and I'm like, son of a gun, I should have noticed that. And I didn't have an answer for it, nor when I did all the investigation, I went back and I looked at the report, and I'm like, nothing adds up. Until I looked at the date, and it was March 8th. and it was daylight savings time occurred while they were responding to the call. I mean, the call was out quite a ways. It wasn't an hour away from them, but I was embarrassed that it took me that long to figure that out. And but so, were there any responses on here that stuck out to you or that needed further?
No.
And then lastly, our ambulance rates were last increased, I want to say in January of 2024. We have a proposal increase on these rates, and I requested just some information from our billing department, our vice president that oversees that, and what they look at is the highest negotiated rate for insurance companies, what they'll pay. We'll go just over that so that we can capture that in our collections from them, and most of that stuff is based off the CPI. Was there anything that stood out or you would like further? And I will be frank, I'd have to reach back out to her to look at this.
Yes.
Actually, Jeff, when I got this, I asked Tracy to look at the last time there was an increase, which was in 14, and I'm 24, and I looked at the increase based on 2 years, and at the price of fuel right now.
Yeah, it's not accounting for that. I can assure you that.
It wasn't. It didn't appear to me that it was a drastic increase from the numbers from before.
So I would ask that, I don't know if this is the right committee or that would vote on this or give us the approval for this.
Tracy, do we just do a concurrence with that, or do we do an approval on it?
I don't believe that you approved them the last in 2024.
You're just
I
making
believe that was a concurrence that.
Yeah.
Craig, you head the finance committee. Do you have any thoughts on it?
I don't think we did. Did we have to approve them, or it was just an increase in the billings? But I don't remember.
Before we get to our regular meeting, Tracy can look at the contract and see
Okay.
what the contract says.
Yeah, we can take a
Okay.
peek at it and see.
And
I don't
we'll either do
remember.
a concurrence, or if we need a motion, we'll do a motion.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right,
I
thank you.
guess I should
Appreciate it.
ask first, does anybody see any big objections to them? Whatever we have to do.
Congratulations on the Grand Haven.
Oh, I as far as my involvement was very minimal, and thankfully so. I don't need any more area to take over.
Well, Wexford County is still looking, and
Yeah.
maybe Manistee County and stuff, so the north area may expand sometime.
Oh, you never know. You never know.
Any other questions for Jeff? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Have a
Jeff.
nice day.
Okay, moving on. Mr. Vandevries, Equalization Director, Equalization Report Highlights.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good to see you. Sorry I missed you at the April meeting. I guess it is already May, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I'll go over just a couple of things from the equalization, just to remind you where we're at. And then if you have any questions about that, I know Catherine gave you basically the simple details of what we did over from last year, but our equalized value went up 10% from 2025. State equalization just occurred on Tuesday, and all of those numbers are finalized now, so no changes after we submitted our numbers. Our taxable value went up 8.39%, which was quite a bit higher than the average around the state, and I think she explained as primarily due to that $34 million increase in taxable value in Hart Township due to the solar farm. And keep in mind that that was just for partial construction. That was not even the full solar farm, but it's my understanding that, and they certainly have the right to apply for a solar PILT. So the final or completed construction of the solar farm and the rest of that value may or may not come onto the ad valorem roll next year. I would assume that they'll finish up that project though this year, and the rest of the value will be accounted for in 2027. If it does come on the ad valorem roll, or they don't apply for a PILT, then that'll all just add to our taxable value. If they do apply for the solar PILT, then it will significantly reduce the amount of tax they pay. That taxable value will come off the ad valorem roll. So we'll see it we won't see a decrease in our overall taxable value next year, but our increase will probably end up being a little less than what the inflation rate is, or real close. So we'll still see an increase, but it will be a little less than the normal increase that we would see based on inflation and uncappings of properties. If it does go to a solar PILT though, the county, you will still receive revenue, but it'll be in proportion to the county's millage rates in relation to the total millage rate that's paid by the taxpayers in Hart Township. So your operating millage, the other millages probably account for about 25%, maybe a little bit more of the overall millage rate. So whatever that PILT payment is, you'll still receive some portion of it. And once we know what that is, you should see the agreement. I believe before they enter that agreement, the county will be notified as to what they're planning to do. So you should get an idea of what type of revenue change it will be versus ad valorem tax versus that PILT. You passed the your L4029 for the summer at I think your last meeting, and so I don't know if you may have noticed that the taxable value on the equalization report was $1,868,000,000, and if you probably didn't notice, but on the L4029 it shows the total taxable of $1,851,000,000. The difference there is that the state, and they've kind of moved to it. A lot of us, removed the veterans exemptions from a lot of our reports last year. This year, the state told everybody they're supposed to do it that way. So it's been kind of one of those confusing issues over the past as to what numbers to actually use. In the past, one of the things I liked about equalization and the numbers was that it's from equalization standpoint that we do, the numbers go from March to March, and for most of our reports, the ending numbers are always our same beginning numbers in the following year. That doesn't work anymore because veterans exemptions change, and so now when we run the reports, it's based on when the local units turned in their databases after the March Board review. All of those numbers that I've used in our reports that excluded the veterans exemptions are based on whatever veterans exemptions were in their database at the end of March. Well, the veterans exemption changes throughout the whole year. So, and they'll be different next year. So the numbers that I just used for our 2026 numbers, that taxable value, the $8 billion or the $1,851,000,000, will be a different starting number next year because it'll just be different based on those numbers. What that really means is not a whole lot. I mean, at the end of the day, the taxable value of each individual property will get levied a tax, and part of that tax will be the county's operating millage rate and your other millage rates that are levied in the winter. So the only real difference is what number I'm using in the report that takes last year's taxable value. We remove additions and we remove losses from the equation for determining the millage reduction fraction. And pretty much everybody had a millage reduction fraction this year. There was a lot of increase from sales, the uncappings. So I actually have the 4028, and I'm looking, there was only one township that did not have a millage reduction fraction, and that was Hart Township. And primarily because the amount of the taxable value additions are removed from that equation. So that was pretty much their big increase. But every other township had a millage reduction fraction. The county had a millage reduction fraction. And this time of year I get a lot of calls about truth in taxation. Over the past several years I've helped, and the county included, has added language to your budget hearing notice, which allows you to not have to hold a separate truth in taxation hearing. Many of the local townships and villages have also done that. The few that do still have to have a truth in taxation. Some seem to still be a little confused. It's like they call and say, we don't want to hold a hearing, or we're going to vote down the millage increase or the millage reduction. And I'm like, well, you can't. You can't just vote. The millage reduction fraction is what it is. The reason why you hold a hearing is that you have an option to hold a truth in taxation hearing if you're required to, or discuss your millage rates at the budget hearing, which allows you to use the formula that includes the inflation rate in the formula. If a local unit chooses not to hold a hearing, then they're required to use what's called the base tax rate fraction. The base tax rate fraction is essentially the same formula, except it doesn't include the inflation rate. Oh. And what that millage reduction fraction and why it includes the inflation rate is the Headley, and it's called Headley because this was passed back in 1978, was so that local units of government, anybody that levies taxes, it limits the amount of revenue. So it gets confusing because we're talking about millage rate and we're talking about revenue. So the millage reduction fraction limits the millage rate, but it's all tied to making it so that the local units of government don't collect more revenue from last year to this year than what the inflation rate is. So our inflation rate for 2026 was 2.7%. So with no new construction and nothing else adding to an assessment or to the taxable base, the revenue from last year is supposed to be no more than 2.7% more this year. And so, but because of the uncappings and other things that increase the tax base, you now have the local that each municipality is different, but if their tax base is going to be then used against the millage rate this year, if it's going to generate more revenue than the 2.7% increase, that's why the millage rate needs to be reduced. So that the slightly smaller millage rate applied to a bigger tax base is going to generate a 2.7% increase in the revenue. And again, because the formula takes out for the new and the losses, or it accounts for that in the formula, generally you're going to experience a little more revenue than the 2.7. So it's confusing to pretty much everybody, and it's something that we talk about once a year. But even if the local unit holds a hearing and says that they're not going to, I guess, adopt the new maximum allowable, that's fine. The millage rate still, or the millage reduction fraction still applies. And I'm always, trying to remind the supervisors and the clerks in the villages and the townships that just because you hold a hearing, the truth in taxation, and you apply that millage reduction fraction, it's telling you what your maximum allowable millage rate will be this year. And that, again, to generate whatever increase in revenue would be what would the inflation rate would allow. It still doesn't prevent the local boards from adopting a millage rate that's less.
Right.
So you don't have to just ignore the truth in taxation hearing and be forced to use the base tax rate fraction to lower the millage rate. Now, if I'd still have, there's a village, I'm trying to think if it's Rothbury, might be Rothbury. It's either Rothbury, Shelby is holding a hearing, but there's a couple that just, they levy a lot less than what they're allowed to anyway. So they just let the base tax rate fraction dictate. Problem is that because in the paperwork that I prepare, that because they allow the base tax rate fraction to apply, it's that coming up with what they're allowed to levy this year is based on what they levied last year. And so theirs gets compounded a little bit more each year. So I told them, well, you really do have, they wanted to levy the same thing last year, which was 4 point some mils. Their maximum was like 13 mils. So they're levying way less than what they could. But I told them that you can't levy the same as last year if you don't hold a hearing, because it gets reduced again further with that base tax rate fraction.
Right.
So they are holding the hearing so they can levy the same as last year. So a lot of it's just, and when you get new clerks coming in, you have to retrain them every year. So, that's what I do this time of year. The equalization, I've hired the same person that is working with my company to do our field appraisal work. It's another level 4. He's the equalization director for Monroe County. And he's part-time there, but he also does equalization for Luce County up in the UP, and he is doing our field studies, so for the agricultural, commercial, industrial. So very qualified individual. He's been in the business, I think, about as long as I have, 30 years. So last year's studies went really well. The state did their audit and they liked what they saw. So we're going to have that same thing. Unfortunately, I'm working with BSNA. We made that switch to the cloud version of the software, and that hasn't gone as well as I'm sure BSA would have liked. I was not that happy. I was actually not able to use the cloud-based software to do our job for 2026. I actually had to export out the data back off the cloud into our old .NET for myself and Mike Wolford to complete the task that needed to be done. It did end up getting all put back into the cloud, and just getting the databases from the 16 townships in the city of Hart, which I do the assessing for them, so I'm dealing with my own work. That was a task to get the numbers into the county-wide database on the cloud. We were able to get the numbers, but with no names or addresses. It was quite a task. I spent 8 hours on a Zoom call with a BSA support person. They actually gave me my own 24/7 support person because I told them, I said, I work past 5 p.m. and I also work on the weekends. And so the person they gave me, though, Kelly Krull, has been wonderful to work with, and I'm actually helping BSA identify and helping them fix the issues with the assessing program, because the other 3 counties that moved to the cloud were kind of the 4 guinea pigs, but because of my computer background, they're kind of been calling me a lot to help them identify the issues and what works and what doesn't work. So they fixed a lot of it. I'm hopeful that they've got some time now before I have to use certain reports and things for next year. But I keep reminding them what those deadlines are.
Yeah.
And so hopefully they get them done well in advance so I can test it out. So that we're moving forward with those. That field work will start. So if you get calls about people, it may be my people. We're meeting after this meeting with Sam from the Spicer Group, and so we're getting close to moving to our new GIS platform. One of the things that I will be talking with Tracy about, the board, you adopted some GIS access fees for parcel layer, imagery layer, the different things that are available once we have identified, and I believe we should have all of the same things available on our new platform that we did through the Beacon portal. But you may need to want to have a discussion and look at those fees that you're charging for the general access. If you want to allow discounts for the local municipal, the townships, cities and villages, if they have projects, and if they're using engineers for those projects, do you want, I think what we've done is we've given them a discount to the standard rate, but it's probably, that access schedule is, I think, a few years old now, so you might want to look at that now that we've making this change. One of the big changes, and hopefully this is going to, it's really going to improve the accuracy of the data on our new portal, because Anna, my administrative clerk downstairs who processes all of the deeds, she is going to, one of the things she's working with Sam right now is she's learning how to actually, when the land divisions come through, she's going to be able to actually revise the parcel layer. Rather than us sending the data to Schneider and waiting and having them do it. They were pretty quick about it, but again, we had issues with our Beacon portal, and it's still showing data from October because they couldn't get the they couldn't communicate with the new cloud-based BSNA software. And so one of the things that I'll get an answer is if Sam at Spicer, if they've been able to coordinate that, because obviously we want today's owners to be shown when somebody pulls up a parcel on the GIS. You want to know who owns it today, not back in October, because we do get a lot of sales on a weekly and monthly basis. So, but those changes to the parcel, and keep in mind that when somebody applies for a land division like today, and it's approved by the township, that land division approval is to create new child parcels that will be in effect for next year, because everything we do is based on December 31st. They do extend that. Some of the units will carry into like January or so for a land division, and they'll create it so that the new parcels can be assessed for right away rather than make them wait a whole another year. But for the most part, land divisions are creating parcels that aren't going to get their own assessments until next year. We still have the ability to show those new parcels and who owns them. If somebody does a split, say you have 10 acres and you turn it into 2 5s and you sell one of the 5s, we can still show who owns that new 5 on that new parcel number, because we're going to create that parcel and coordinate with the local assessor. The only thing that isn't going to be on the in the GIS will be is it's not going to have any assessed value or taxable value until next year. And so we're figuring out how to display those new children parcels, who the ownership is, but also let people know that they have to look at the parent parcel, because the parent parcel, that 10-acre parcel, is still going to receive both the summer and winter bills. And it's between those buyer and sellers to to divvy up who owes what for that for 2026. I think that's about it. Apportionment report will be coming up, and the villages have all received their L4029s and paperwork, so those should be getting submitted so that they can do their summer bills. The county clerk sent out the L4029 to all the taxing jurisdictions for you to collect your operating millage. You've got your ballot question coming up for the allocated operating to restore that starting next year, along with the townships and the ISD. And I believe you have a couple others coming up. And
Ambulance.
Is it 911 and ambulance?
Yeah.
And you can, I know I've seen some language on it. I don't know if you've approved the ballot language yet.
All of that's complete.
It's all approved?
Yep.
So that should go to the August, and so when you're ready to have the winter L4029, you just have to approve those, whatever final millage rates you want for the winter collection has to be done before September 30th. So you can levy the maximum or something less, but I've got those all figured out, what your maximums are going to be. And I guess I think that's about it. But I want to just make myself available if you have any questions. I'm glad Catherine was here to show you the numbers. I'm getting her groomed to hopefully take over when I really step down more.
Any questions for Ed?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ed.
Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Administrator Biard, Resolution 2026-66 for Mental Health Awareness Month.
Mental Health reached out and asked if the county board would approve the Resolution 2610 proclaiming May as Mental Health Awareness Month as we have done in the past. Questions?
Okay.
Comments?
I'll just make a comment. I've made the same comment every year that this has come before me. I recognize that mental health is a big issue, but I also struggle that community mental health, I don't believe, has the answers for most of the mental health issues at hand. So I'm not into grandstanding for resolutions that really don't actually have much impact, so I will be voting no on this resolution when it comes before us.
Anyone else? Continuing on, Administrator Biard, Administrator review of selected claims for payment and Administrator report.
The claims for payment have been provided for you. Are there any questions, comments? Okay, if not, I provided a report in your packet. I was out at the administrators conference last week. There is one thing that I did want to bring up that happened last week while I was at that conference. The House Government Operations Committee pushed a House bill out to the House for approval. They denied any testimonials from anyone. They didn't want to hear from anyone. So MAC was unable to speak with them and oppose this bill. This bill passed a sweeping 8-bill property tax and utility reform package. It's elimination of state education tax, the repeal of the pop-up tax, which is the your proposal A when someone takes on a new property. That would be going away. That I don't know if that's entirely proposal A or just that piece of the taxes, which is going to pull quite a bit of taxes from the counties for those taxes. Real estate transfer tax repeal, personal property tax elimination, and utility rate relief. They they're holding on to another House bill, which is $5,800, and that was for revenue replacement for this property tax bill. They haven't done anything with it. So if this were to pass the Senate, it could be a significant hit to all of us. They're saying local revenue by millions. So if you're talking to our senator, please let him know we're opposed. So that's all I have.
All right. Any questions, comments? Have none either. Department head reports. Hearing none. Is there any public comment at this time for the Finance Administration Committee? Hearing none, we will adjourn the Finance and Administration Committee and we'll take a short break before we start the regular board meeting.